Blackwood Nightwatch. Rain lashed against the windscreen in sheets, the wipers beating back the deluge with a tired squeal, barely keeping up. Tom Pierce leaned forward over the wheel, squinting through the murk. The radio crackled again, a stuttering burst of static, then a voice, faint, broken female. "Anyone? Please. I can't, he's bleeding, please." It cut off. Tom slammed the brakes, tires skidding slightly on the slick tarmac of the service road. He'd been heading back to the ranger station after checking a fallen fence near the tarn, but the voice, tinny, desperate, had come over the emergency ban. Not official, not mountain rescue, not even a proper distress beacon. Just a handheld, low battery, someone screaming into the dark. He reached for the handset, thumbed the transmit. "This is Blackwood Warden 2. Repeat last. Over." Nothing but the hiss of rain and static. He glanced at the map wedged beside the gear stick. The signal had to be close, maybe half a mile west, where the forestry road twisted down toward the gill. No dwellings out there, just plantation and old stone walls, the kind that swallowed signal and sound. Still, he couldn't ignore it. Tom shifted into gear and rolled forward, tires sloshing through puddles. The trees closed in quickly here, Scots pine and beech, thick with moss and shadow. Rain drummed on the roof, and every now and then the wind groaned through the branches like something wounded. His headlamps caught movement ahead. A car. It was pulled up awkwardly on the verge, front end nosed into the ditch, hazard lights blinking feebly. Driver's door hung open, no one inside. Tom stopped a few yards behind, engine idling. Rain hammered down as he stepped out, torch in hand. The air stank petrol, wet earth, something metallic beneath it. He moved slowly, boots squelching in the mud, scanning the trees. "Hello?" he called, voice tight. "You all right? This is the park warden. I received your call." Silence. He reached the car. No keys. A child's car seat in the back, empty. A smear of something dark across the passenger window. His gut twisted. He turned toward the tree line and froze. Figures were moving between the trees. Staggering. Slow, but wrong. Their shapes jutted at angles that didn't fit. One of them stepped into the beam of his torchlight. Her face was slack, jaw unhinged, eyes milky and unfocused. One arm hung useless, broken in two places. Her dress was soaked and torn, but it was the skin that stopped him. Gray, pitted, flaking at the edges like bark. And the sound-wet, breathless groaning that came from deep in the throat. Jesus Christ. Tom stepped back, hand going to his belt. He had a flare gun, a penknife, and not much else. He raised the torch again. More were coming. Half a dozen, maybe more, emerging from the gloom, drawn by the lights or the voice, or maybe just the smell of something living. "Back off!" he shouted, though his voice cracked. "Stay where you are!" They didn't stop. The woman lunged first, slow but deliberate, arms grasping, fingers clawing the air. Tom swung the torch, catching her across the temple with a sickening crack. She dropped, and he stumbled back, breath ragged. Another one reached him. Male, older, face torn open across one cheek. Tom shoved him hard, felt the give of rotten muscle beneath his hands, and ran. He hit the driver's seat, slammed the door, locked it. The figures were at the windows in seconds, smearing the glass with filth and blood. One of them slammed its head repeatedly against the side mirror until the plastic cracked. Tom threw the truck into reverse and powered back up the road. Mud sprayed the undercarriage as he twisted the wheel, tires struggling for purchase. The infected, or whatever they were, didn't chase fast, but they didn't stop either. Just kept coming, stumbling through the rain, relentless. His heart pounded. Procedure was gone. No protocol for this. No training covered what to do when the dead walked. He grabbed the radio again. Blackwood Base. This is Warden 2. I've got Jesus. I don't know what I've got. Hostile individuals, possibly infected. Immediate danger. Requesting backup and medical units. Over. Silence. Then static. Then nothing. He swore, checked the signal dead. Either the storm or the hills had blocked it. Maybe both. He drove faster, trying to outpace the crawling dread in his chest. The road twisted sharply ahead, and he took it too quickly. That's when he saw it. A fallen oak lay across the track, thick trunk ripped from the roots, branches splayed like skeletal fingers. Rain had loosened the slope above half the bank had come down with it. He braked hard, but the tires locked. The truck skidded sideways on the waterlogged surface. Time slowed. The front bumper hit the trunk with a crunch of metal. Then the world tilted. The truck slid off the verge into the stream below. Cold water surged over the bonnet. His head cracked against the window. Darkness swallowed everything. He came to with the sound of water rushing past his ears and the sting of blood in his eyes. Dazed, he reached for the door, but it jammed. The cab was filling. He fumbled at the seatbelt, managed to release it, and crawled over the gear stick, kicking the passenger door open with a grunt. Freezing water dragged at his legs as he waded to the bank, slipping on moss-slick stone. He collapsed on hands and knees, coughing hard, chest heaving. Somewhere behind him, the truck groaned, shifted, and then sank deeper into the stream bed with a final hiss. He forced himself upright. His torch was gone. So was the radio. The only light came from the storm flashes of silver through the cloud and trees, enough to show the shattered road, the broken branches, and the dark forest looming around him. He staggered to the bank, climbed through a gap in the dry stone wall, and found a narrow deer path winding uphill. He didn't know where it led, but he couldn't stay here. Not with those things nearby. He moved on, boots squelching, head pounding. Every step was a fight against the cold, and the screaming logic in his mind that said none of this should be happening. He'd seen accidents, seen drownings. Once, a hiker dead from exposure, curled up like a child beside a stone outcrop. But never this. Never the dead walking. He crested a rise and saw a crag ahead limestone, veined with ivy. A dark slit at its base beckoned. A cave. Shelter. He stumbled toward it, ducked inside. The air inside was damp and still, thick with the smell of wet rock and something older. The storm noise dulled immediately, replaced by the drip of water and the hush of enclosed space. He sank to the ground against the wall, shivering. In the dark, he fumbled in his coat pocket and pulled out something small, soft, worn, absurd. A baby boot. Knitted wool, once pale blue, now faded to gray. He held it between thumb and forefinger the way he always did when the silence got too loud. A ritual. No one knew he kept it. Not even the team back at the station. He'd found it 2 years ago during a failed rescue near the pass. They never found the child. Just the boot. Caught on a branch above the beck. He closed his eyes, pressing it to his forehead. Then the silence broke. A sound deeper in the cave. Not an echo. Not water. A shuffle. A breath. He froze, and then the radio crackled to life. Faint. Warped by distance and static. Blackwood. Evac. Repeat. Survivor. He turned toward the noise, heart hammering. But the voice faded again, and something else was moving in the dark. Blackwood Nightwatch. Tom's breath caught in his throat. He stayed still, ears straining against the darkness, trying to separate real sound from the blood thudding in his skull. The shuffle had stopped. So had the breath. Only the quiet hiss of the radio remained, a ghost of a voice crackling through static. He rose slowly, boots scraping against the damp stone floor, and felt for the torch clipped to his belt. It clicked on with a weak beam, the bulb flickering, casting long shadows across the cave walls. The beam caught the slick sheen of moisture on limestone, then glinted off something metallic to his right. A battered camping stove, folded and dark. He moved carefully, light sweeping across the chamber. A rucksack, half-zipped, slumped against the wall. A sleeping bag, flattened and damp. Rust-stained mugs. Someone had been here recently. Longer than a night, maybe. Long enough to try and settle in. He crouched beside the rucksack and unzipped it. Inside, a cracked thermos, a tin of beans, half a pack of oatcakes gone soft with damp, and his fingers closed around a familiar texture. He drew it out slowly. The other baby boot. Still pale blue beneath the grime, the yarn frayed at the toe where it had snagged something. A loose thread dangled like a question mark. Tom stared at it, throat tight. This one hadn't been lost in a storm. It had been packed, kept. Whoever had been here had a child, or had meant to. He tucked it into his jacket beside the first and turned back to the radio. The voice was gone now, only static remained, a thin, uneven hiss like breath through broken teeth. He adjusted the dial, wincing as the knob ground against grit. No signal. Just fragments, words swallowed by noise. Hostiles. Cedar Creek. Repeat. Hold position. He barely had time to process the fragment before a new sound cut through the cave. Screaming. Outside. High-pitched. Human. And then the hoarse, guttural snarls he'd come to recognize far too quickly. Tom bolted upright and ran to the cave mouth, torch beams slicing through the rain. Two figures were sprinting up the slope, one limping heavily. A woman, dark hair plastered to her face, arm around a taller man's waist. He stumbled, nearly dragging her down, and she screamed again. Behind them, through the trees movement, dozens of them. Pale shapes weaving between trunks, limbs jerking at unnatural angles, eyes catching the torchlight with a glassy sheen. Tom dropped the torch and grabbed the flare pistol from his belt. One shot left. He raised it, aimed just above the approaching line of infected, and fired. The flare burst overhead with a sharp report, bathing the slope in red light. "Here!" he shouted, waving. "This way!" The woman's head snapped toward him. Her face was streaked with mud and blood, eyes wild. She didn't hesitate. They stumbled toward him, the man wheezing, clutching his side. Tom met them at the mouth of the cave and dragged them both inside, shoving a rock into place behind them. Not a door, not even a proper barrier, but it would slow something. Maybe. The woman collapsed against the wall, gasping. The man slid down beside her, one leg stretched awkwardly, hand clamped over his ribs. Tom knelt beside them, pulling a small LED torch from his jacket. "You're safe. For now," he said, voice low. "What's your name?" "Anna," she panted. "That's Max." Tom nodded once. "Tom, I was a warden. Blackwood Forest." Anna nodded vaguely, eyes darting around the cave. "Any bites?" Tom asked. Max flinched. Anna's face twisted. Tom's stomach sank. "Show me." Max hesitated, then pulled back the collar of his jacket. The bite was on his shoulder, deep, already turning black at the edges. The flesh around it was swollen and slick with pus. Not fresh, maybe a day old. Tom closed his eyes for a heartbeat. "How long?" he asked. Max didn't answer. Anna did. "Anna, about 20 hours. Maybe more." Tom opened his mouth and stopped. Anna's other hand was on her belly. It took him a moment to realize what the gesture meant. "You're pregnant," he said. She nodded. 8 months. Maybe more. I started bleeding an hour ago. Then the pain started. Tom sat back on his heels. The cave felt smaller suddenly, the air heavier. He looked at Max, who was shaking now, teeth clenched. Sweat slicked his forehead. We were trying to get to the old substation. Heard there were people holding out there, but they were gone. Just blood. We kept moving. Then they found us. Tom stood and moved to the rucksack again, pulling out bandages, a bottle of antiseptic, a length of cord. Max's eyes followed him. "You're going to kill me," he said quietly. "No," Tom replied, voice flat. "I'm going to tie you to that boulder." Max didn't resist. He just nodded. Tom worked quickly, securing Max's arms behind the rock, then looping the cord around his chest and thighs. It wasn't perfect, but it would hold for now. Anna watched in silence, one arm wrapped around her belly, the other pressed to the floor to steady herself. Tom sat beside her and passed her a flask of water. "Drink." Slowly. She took a sip, then another. "Your baby's early," he said. "You got pain? Bleeding? We need to be ready." Anna nodded again, eyes locked on Max. "I know." Tom glanced at the radio, still silent. The battery light blinked red. "Was that your boot?" he asked softer. She looked at him, confused. He pulled the second baby boot from his pocket and held it out. Anna's breath hitched. Her hand trembled as she took it. "It was in his pack," Tom said. "I found the other a few days ago near the pass." Anna clutched the boot to her chest, eyes wet but unblinking. Max coughed, a deep, rattling sound that ended in a wheeze. Tom moved back to him, pressing 2 fingers to his neck. Pulse was rapid, shallow, fevered. "Do it now," Max whispered. Tom shook his head. "I'm not gone yet," Max said. "But I will be. And when I am, don't let me near her." "I won't," Tom said. "That's why you're tied." "You don't understand," Max hissed. "When it happens, I won't be me. I'll want to hurt her. The baby." Tom didn't respond. He just pulled a tarp from the pack and draped it over Max's lower body, leaving his face and chest exposed. "Why not just end it?" Max asked. "You've seen what they become." Tom stood and turned away. "Because you're still breathing?" He moved to the cave entrance, checking the barricade. It hadn't shifted. The infected hadn't followed. Yet. Rain still fell outside, steady and cold. The storm had eased, but the sound of water running through the forest had deepened. The creek would be rising. He turned back and began sorting supplies. 4 tins of food, 1 knife, blunt, half a roll of bandage, a small med kit, 2 flares, and the radio blinking its dying red eye. He tried the dial again, nothing but static. Then, faintly, "Evac, Cedar Creek, survivors, hold for extraction." He leaned closer. "Last window, 0300, flare signal, repeat." The message looped, breaking apart in static. Tom checked his watch. The glass was cracked, but the hands still moved. Just past midnight. 3 hours. He looked at Anna. She was curled on her side, breathing through her teeth, one hand clenched in the dirt. Max moaned softly, head lolling. Tom moved to the cave wall and sat down, cradling the radio. Somewhere below, deep in the stone, he heard a scrape. Not water, not wind. Something moving. He rose again, torch in hand, and moved toward the rear of the cave. The beam caught the uneven floor, the jagged wall, and then a narrow gap barely a foot wide, a tunnel. Too small for him, but not for something else. He backed away slowly, heart hammering. Returning to the others, he began stacking rocks near the gap, blocking it as best he could. Anna stirred. "What is it?" "Nothing," he said. "Just keeping us safe." She didn't press. Max was still, breath shallow. Tom sat between them, watching the radio. Another scrape. Closer this time. He picked up the knife. If Max turned, he'd have to act fast. If whatever was in the tunnel got through, he'd have to protect Anna. He was already calculating. How to move her. Where to hide the baby if she delivered. What to do if Max rose. The weight of it all settled on him like wet stone. He reached into his jacket and touched the two baby boots, side by side. Small things, but they meant something. He closed his eyes and waited. Contractions tore through the silence, sharp and sudden. Anna's cry echoed off the damp stone, ragged and raw. Tom was on his feet before he'd even registered moving, the knife clattering to the floor as he dropped beside her. "It's happening," she gasped, clutching her belly. Her face was pale, glazed with sweat, her breathing shallow and fast. He nodded, already shifting into action. "We need to move. That alcove we'll manage there." She shook her head once, violently. Can't walk." "You won't." "I'll carry you." Max stirred behind them, a low moan curling into the air like smoke. Tom shot a glance at him. The restraint's paracord wrapped around rusted pythons driven into stone held, but they'd grown taut. His skin was gray now, a sickly pallor spreading across his cheeks. One eye was open, unfocused, the other swollen shut. Tom bent low, arms under Anna's back and knees. She cried out as he lifted her, a sound that stabbed him deep. The alcove wasn't far. A shallow offshoot of the main cave, barely shoulder width, with a sloped floor that rose above the waterline. He'd cleared it earlier, just in case. He laid her down gently, jacket under her head, torch wedged into a crevice above them, casting flickering light. The stone was slick, but at least it was dry enough. Anna panted, her hands gripping the rock. "I need to push." Tom knelt beside her, fumbling open the med kit. "I'm not a midwife," he muttered. "Jesus. You're all I've got." That silenced him. He checked her pulse fast. Her hands were trembling. He opened the tiny foil packet marked sterile gloves and pulled them on with clumsy fingers. A smear of blood already marked the stone between her thighs. "Right. You're doing well. Just breathe with me." She nodded barely. Outside the alcove, Max groaned again, louder. The cords creaked. Tom swallowed hard. "Ignore him," he said. "Focus on me." Anna screamed, legs straining, body curled around the pain. Tom caught her hand, let her squeeze until his knuckle popped. "Keep going," he said. "You're close." The water in the main cave was rising. He could hear it lapping now, soft and steady. Rain still fell outside, feeding the stream, the current. The tunnel he'd blocked earlier was silent, but that didn't ease his nerves. Something had been moving. And Max was no longer still. Another push, another scream. "Head's crowning," Tom said, voice tight. "One more. You got this." Anna bore down with a sound that wasn't quite human. Grief and pain and raw determination all at once. Tom caught the baby as it emerged, slick and trembling in his hands. For a moment he froze, heart thudding. Then it cried. A thin, high wail that filled the cave like a flare in the dark. Anna collapsed back, sobbing with relief. Tom wrapped the baby in his spare shirt, hands shaking. It was tiny, far too small, but it was breathing. Its fists curled, its face scrunched. "It's a boy," he said. "You did it?" Anna reached for him blindly, and he laid the bundle in her arms. She clutched him tight, murmuring something soft he couldn't hear. Then the cord snapped. The sound was like a gunshot in the cave's hush. Tom spun, torch beam swinging. Max was on his knees, arms free, head lolling forward. "Max," Tom said, voice low. "Don't." Max raised his head. His eyes were wrong now, clouded, bloodshot, unfocused. Foam flecked his lips. He staggered forward, one foot dragging behind. Tom stepped between him and the alcove, knife raised. "Don't make me do this." Max hesitated. For a breath, just one, he seemed almost lucid. "Anna," he croaked. Tom's resolve cracked. "Max, you're still in there. You can fight it." Max lunged. The knife caught his shoulder, slicing deep, but he didn't stop. Tom stumbled back, feet slipping on wet stone. Max fell on him, teeth snapping inches from his face. Tom drove the blade up again into his ribs, twisting. Max screamed high, gurgling, inhuman. They hit the ground hard. Tom's elbow cracked against rock. The knife skittered away. Max's hands clawed at his throat. Then he jerked once, violently, and rolled off. Coughing, Tom scrambled to his knees. Max was crawling now, away from the light, toward the back of the cave. His blood left a dark smear on the stone. Max, Anna's voice hoarse. He didn't turn, just vanished into the shadows, dragging himself into the narrow tunnel Tom had tried to block. Gone. Tom stared after him, chest heaving, then forced himself to his feet. "We need to move," he said, voice rasping. "Now." Anna was already shifting, the baby tucked tight against her chest, wrapped in the shirt. She was pale, shaking, but upright. "Where?" "Up. There's a ledge narrow, but it's above the waterline. We can wait there until the window." He helped her up, one arm around her waist. The climb was steep, muddy stone, slick with condensation. He'd tested it earlier, just enough to know it held. Now it had to hold again. Anna went first, one hand gripping the stone, the other cradling the baby. Tom stayed close behind, ready to catch her if she slipped. His muscles burned with effort, every movement slow and careful. Below them, the water crept higher. At the top, the ledge was barely wide enough for both of them. Tom huddled beside her, breath ragged. The torchlight flickered below, casting long shadows. Anna looked down, eyes wide. "Where did he go?" "I don't know." Silence stretched. Then a sound. Not the water, wet footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Tom leaned forward, peering into the dark. A smear of blood marked the stone where Max had gone. And just beyond it, barely audible over the rain and the baby's soft whimpers, a scrape. Then another. He pressed his back against the stone and gripped the knife again, though his hand trembled. Anna didn't speak. The baby shifted in her arms, let out a small, mewling cry. Below, something paused, listening. Then the footsteps started again. Platform of bones. The wind hit them like a slap as they emerged from the fisher's upper mouth. Cold and wet, it carried the sour stench of the valley below, rotting leaves, stagnant water, and something deeper, something rank with death. Tom gripped Anna's arm tighter as she staggered, shielding the baby with her body. The infant whimpered again, the small sound lost almost instantly in the gust. They were on a rocky outcrop, slick with moss and rain, hemmed in by bramble and the rusted skeleton of the old watchtower's access platform. The forest fell away beneath them in a blur of shadow and movement, the treetops swaying like drowned weeds. Above, the tower loomed a metal frame of bolted girders and narrow steps, winding up into the mist like a ladder to nowhere. Tom scanned the base. The access stairs groaned in the wind, the lowest section twisted and hanging half-detached. The rest of the spiral looked intact but corroded, the handrails warped and flaking. A narrow catwalk led to a maintenance cabin bolted to the side of the structure, halfway up. If the emergency radio still worked, it would be in there. He turned to Anna. "Can you climb?" She nodded, eyes glassy with exhaustion but fixed. The baby stirred against her chest. Tom helped her onto the first step. It shifted under her weight with a metallic creak. He followed, testing each foothold. The steps were rain-slicked and pitted with rust. Below, in the trees, something moved, a dark shape, weaving through the underbrush. Too fast for the wind, too silent for an animal. Max. They climbed faster. By the time they reached the first turn in the spiral, Anna was shaking. Not from fear, she'd passed that point, but sheer physical depletion. Blood still stained the inside of her thigh. The baby let out a strangled wail, and she clutched it tighter, whispering soft nonsense to soothe it. Tom glanced down. The shape was still following, closer now. keeping to the shadows just beyond the reach of the tower's base light, such as it was. A smear of blood on a lower step confirmed it. He didn't say anything. They reached a gap where one section of the stair had collapsed entirely. Just empty air between two platforms. The drop wasn't huge, maybe 10 feet, but fatal if they missed the jump, especially for Anna. A rusted maintenance ladder had been bolted to the side once. Now it hung loose, one end still attached, swinging like a pendulum in the wind. Tom tested it. It groaned but held. "I'll go first," he said. She didn't argue. He swung out, boots finding the lower rungs. The wind caught him, nearly peeling him off the side. One hand on the baby, Anna couldn't follow the same way. "Wait," Tom hissed, climbing quickly. At the top, he reached the ledge, a narrow metal platform with warped grating. He turned, bracing himself. "Pass her up." Anna hesitated, her eyes wide. "She'll be safer with me." She kissed the baby's forehead once, then held her out with trembling arms. Tom took the infant, cradling her close to his chest. The small body was warm, eyes closed, lips pursed. A tiny boot, the half-knitted one, peeked from beneath the swaddling. He didn't have time to think about it. "Now you," he called. Anna swung out, gripping the ladder with one hand. The other fumbled, legs scrabbling. Tom leaned down, caught her wrist, hauled her the last few feet. She collapsed beside him, breathing hard. Below, a low moan floated up. The shape had reached the broken stairs. It paused, head tilted, sniffing. Tom grabbed Anna's hand. "Move." They crossed the platform grating slick with moss and rainwater toward the maintenance cabin. The door was closed, rusted shut. Tom yanked the handle. It didn't budge. He braced his shoulder against it and shoved. Metal screamed. The door shuddered, then cracked open an inch. Anna ducked inside, Tom right behind her. The cabin was small, barely more than a box metal walls, a warped desk, empty equipment racks. A single emergency panel blinked faintly in the corner. The radio. He crossed to it, flipped the cover, and twisted the dial. Static. He turned it again. Then a burst of sound. Garbled, but human. Blackwood sector. Repeat, Blackwood sector. Come in." Tom snatched the mic. "This is Tom Pierce, park warden. I have 2 civilians, 1 adult, 1 newborn. We're at the old watchtower above Blackwood Valley. Require immediate extraction. Hostiles in the area. Copy?" Silence. Then, "Blackwood Station, this is Flight Lieutenant Kemp, RAF SAR. Confirm location watchtower, Valley Edge?" "Affirmative." A pause. Then, "Understood. We have visual on the sector. Extraction window is tight 15 minutes max. Weather closing in. We can lower for 2, but hoist is slow. Be advised, multiple extractions unlikely. Prepare flare signal. Radio battery low?" "Very." "Keep it off until signal. We'll call on approach. Out." The line died. Tom exhaled. 15 minutes. Anna slumped against the wall, the baby cradled in her arms. Will it hold? Doesn't have to. Just needs to last that long. He looked around. The door had no lock. He dragged an old filing cabinet in front of it, wedging it tight. The cabin shuddered with every gust. One corner of the roof had peeled back, letting in rain. He found a flare in the emergency box, miraculously dry, and loaded it into the launcher. Outside, the wind screamed. Then another sound. Clang. Metal on metal. Anna looked up sharply. "Stairs," Tom said. "He's climbing." The infected was slow, usually. Shambling. But Max had moved differently. Even in the cave, half-turned, he'd been fast. Determined. Driven. Tom checked his knife. The edge was nicked. No gun. No spare weapons. Just the flare launcher, 1 shot. He turned to Anna. "If he gets in, you take the baby and go out the roof. There's a lip might give you time." "No. You have to. I'm not leaving you. He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped to the window, a narrow slit of cracked glass. Rain streaked down it in rivulets. Below, something moved across the platform. A shadow. Then another creak. The door shivered in its frame. Anna stood back against the wall, the baby quiet in her arms. She was so pale. Her hair was plastered to her forehead, soaked through, but her eyes were steady. Tom crouched by the door, listening. Nothing. Then scrape. A hand, pale, pressing against the glass, fingers twisted, broken at the knuckles. The face that followed was barely human, sunken cheeks, gray skin, one eye milky, the other still blue. Max. His mouth open. Not a scream, not a word. Just hunger. He slammed into the door, the cabinet shifted. Tom rammed it back, knife ready. Another slam. The hinges groaned. Anna backed toward the far wall, cradling the baby. Her lips moved silently. A prayer, maybe. Or Max's name. Tom looked at the flare launcher. Then at the roof hatch. Another impact. The door buckled. Tom grabbed the launcher, aimed at the ceiling, and fired. The flare exploded through the gap, a burst of red light streaking into the storm. It arced high, then vanished into the clouds. The cabin filled with smoke and color. Below, a scream answered. Not Max. Others, drawn by the light. Tom's stomach clenched. He turned back to the door. It burst inward. Max stumbled through, dragging one leg, arms outstretched. Tom met him head on. They crashed into the wall, knife slicing through cloth, skin, something thicker. Max didn't stop. His hands clawed at Tom's shoulders, mouth snapping inches from his throat. Tom shoved. Max slammed into the desk, overturned it, crashed to the floor. Tom raised the knife, paused. Max looked up, blood running from his mouth, a flicker of recognition. Then it was gone. Tom drove the blade down. It took 3 hits. Then Max stopped moving. Tom staggered back, breathing hard. Anna hadn't screamed. She just stood there, the baby tight in her arms, silent tears on her cheeks. Tom dropped the knife. The radio crackled. Blackwood platform, this is Rescue 1. Visual on flare. Hoist in motion. Confirm status. He grabbed the mic. 1 hostile neutralized. Platform unstable. Ready for evac. Understood. ETA 3 minutes. Tom went to the door. Below, the rotor beat grew louder, blades cutting through rain. A yellow light swept the tower as the helicopter came in low, buffeted by wind. Tom turned to Anna. They'll lower the basket. You go first. She nodded. No argument. He helped her out onto the platform, guiding her to the edge. The baby whimpered once, then went quiet. A cable descended, swaying. Anna stepped in, arms wrapped around the infant. Tom clipped her in. The winch began to rise. She looked down at him. He didn't wave, just watched. The basket vanished into the storm. Tom turned back to the cabin. Max's body lay still, eyes open to the ceiling. The flare smoke lingered. Tom stepped outside. The platform groaned beneath him. He looked up. The basket was returning. He heard them on the forest floor, now more infected, drawn by the light, the noise. They were coming. He gripped the railing, waited. The basket touched down again. He climbed in. As it rose, the tower below shuddered. Then, with a sound like tearing metal, the maintenance cabin collapsed. The last thing Tom saw as they cleared the trees was the platform folding in on itself, swallowed by shadow. He looked up. Anna was there, cradling the baby, alive. He closed his eyes as the rotor beat drowned out the moans below. Last light. The winch groaned above him, steel cable taut against the pull of wind and weight. Rain slashed sideways, needling Tom's face as the basket swung in the gale, jerking with every gust. He gripped the edges hard, boots braced against the cage floor, his knuckles white and raw. The tower dropped away beneath him, what was left of it, a twisted carcass of timber and rusted bolts, now half consumed by the forest hunger. Above, the helicopter's belly loomed, its underside lit with sickly amber from the flare's dying glow. The rotor's thrum pounded through the storm, swallowing the groans rising from below. But even over the din, he could still hear them clawing, snarling, the wet slap of feet against mud and wood. The infected were still coming. The baskets slammed against the side of the chopper with a metallic clang. "Hold tight!" a voice barked over the wind. Hands reached down. Tom felt himself grabbed, hauled, then yanked bodily up onto the narrow floor of the cabin. Cold metal met his knees as he collapsed inside, breath ragged, soaked through, ears ringing. "Got him," someone said. Price, he thought, though the voice was buried under the storm. "Seal the door," Kemp snapped. Her tone clipped, razor-edged. The hatch slammed shut behind them. For a moment, the storm was muffled. The cabin was a cocoon of sweat, diesel, and blood. The baby's cry cut through it all thin, reedy, alive. Tom turned his head. Anna sat on the floor, cradling the infant, her hair plastered to her face. Her arms were trembling but steady, her eyes locked on the child with a look that was part awe, part terror. She didn't seem to notice Tom at first. Just the baby. Just the fragile thing she'd carried through fire and flood and death. "We've got to move," Kemp said. "Fuel margins tight. We're not circling." Tom nodded, still on his knees. "Everyone stable?" Price asked, crouching beside him. She ran a gloved hand over his head, checking for blood. "Fine," Tom managed. "Just tired." Price looked him over again, but didn't argue. She turned to Anna next, her voice softening. "Let me check the baby." Anna hesitated, then slowly loosened her grip. Price worked quickly, stethoscope, torchlight, fingers gentle but firm. Breathing shallow but steady, cold, but no signs of distress. "We need to get them both warm," she said. Then to Kemp. "We've got to put down soon." Kemp gave a short nod. "ETA 10 minutes. Hold tight." The aircraft banked suddenly, throwing Tom sideways. He caught himself on a strut, biting back a curse. Through the small window, the forest below shivered and lurched. Movement in the trees' figures swarming like ants, drawn to the tower's wreckage, to the noise, the light. He saw one lift its face. Its mouth gaped, broken and bloody. It looked like Max. His gut twisted. He turned away from the window. Anna was watching him now. Her face was hollow, streaked with grime and tears, but something in her eyes had hardened. She knew what he'd done, what he'd had to do. He didn't speak. Neither did she. The baby stirred. Anna pulled her closer, whispering something only the child could hear. The chopper jolted again. "We're losing altitude," Kemp said. "Downdraft over the ridge." Tom forced himself upright, muscles screaming. "What do you need?" "Weight distribution. Sit centerline. Keep low." He obeyed, crawling forward to brace himself near the bulkhead. The deck vibrated beneath him, an angry tremor that set his teeth on edge. The baby cried again, shrill, frightened. "Almost there," Price murmured, wrapping the infant tighter in a foil blanket. "Hang on, little one." Tom stared at the floor. There was blood there, his, Max's, someone else's. It didn't matter. It was everywhere now. The storm, the forest, the world, it all stank of blood. He closed his eyes. Max's face floated there, twisted and wrong. The moment before the knife fell. The flicker recognition, pain, memory. He didn't know. Didn't want to. The chopper lurched again. A warning light blinked red above Kemp's head. "Brace!" she shouted. The ground came up fast. And with a final whine of tortured metal, the aircraft skidded sideways across a clearing, rotors slicing branches before the pilot killed the lift. The landing wasn't clean. Something cracked. The rear strut gave and the tail dipped, sending a fresh jolt through the cabin. But they were down. "Out! Go!" Kemp ordered, unclipping her harness. Tom moved on instinct. The side door burst open, and cold air slammed into them. Rain and smoke and the sharp tang of pine. A triage team waited, torches bobbing, stretchers ready, voices barking over the wind. "Infant and mother first," Price called, waving them over. Anna hesitated as they reached for her arms clenching tighter. "It's okay," Tom said quietly. "They'll take care of you." She looked at him, something unreadable passing across her face. Then she nodded. Let them lift the baby, then herself. She vanished into the dark, flanked by medics. Tom stood there a moment longer, the rain soaking him anew. Kemp came up beside him. Her helmet was off, her hair plastered to her skull, face drawn tight. "You did what you had to," she said. He didn't reply. She looked at him, then handed him something. The baby boot. A little half-knitted thing from the cave. "I found it in the pack," she said. Figured it mattered. He took it, held it in his palm. It was damp, misshapen, threadbare. It felt heavier than it should. "We've got to move," Kemp said again, softer this time. He nodded. They walked across the clearing together toward the waiting lights. Behind them, the chopper hissed and ticked as it cooled, its rotors slowing. The forest loomed, black and endless. But ahead, somewhere beyond the floodplain and the ruin and the rot, a single tent glowed against the dark white canvas, backlit by lanterns, a fragile thing refusing to fold. Inside, the baby cried again. Alive. Tom didn't look back. Dawn crept in slow and gray, filtering through the mist like a breath held too long. The clearing had stilled. The chaos of the landing faded into the quiet hum of generators and the rustle of waterproof jackets. Tom sat on a canvas stretcher outside the main triage tent, a foil blanket crinkling around his shoulders. His knuckles were scraped raw, the blood dried into the cracks. Someone had cleaned the worst of it off him, but he still felt caked in grime and smoke and something deeper, harder to wash. Paramedic Jordan Price crouched nearby, checking a clipboard against a series of wristbands. He glanced up and caught Tom's eye. "You're stable," he said, tone dry but not unkind. "Pulse is thready but holding. No breaks, some bruised ribs, and you'll need antibiotics. You're not the worst I've seen tonight." Tom nodded, throat too dry for words. He held the baby boot in his palm, thumb brushing the unraveled yarn at the edge. He hadn't let go of it since Kemp handed it to him. Jordan rose and stretched, joints popping. "Anna and the baby are in the forward unit. We lifted them out 20 minutes ago, just after you came in. They're en route to Carlisle. We've got a field NICU set up in one of the old barracks. RAF's holding the perimeter." Tom swallowed hard. "The baby?" "Breathing. Pink. Hungry. All the things you want a newborn to be." Jordan paused, then added, "Anna wouldn't let go of him the whole flight. Not for a second. She asked me to give you something." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded bit of gauze. Inside was the other baby boot, its twin, this one finished, neat and small, the stitches tight. Pale blue wool, the kind sold in tiny village shops that smelled of lavender and mothballs. She said you'd understand. Tom took it with both hands. The foil blanket slipped down his arms. "She named him Max," Jordan said after a moment. "After his father." The name landed like a stone in a still pond. Not a surprise, not really. But it rippled through Tom anyway, stirring things that had settled too fast. He closed his fingers around both boots and nodded once, slowly. Jordan stepped back, giving him space. "We're doing another sweep at first light," he said, softer now. "What's left of the tower's gone, but we've marked the site. We'll find what we can." Tom didn't ask what that meant. He knew. Max was gone. What remained, if anything, was just a formality, a kindness for the record. The man had died before the bullet. The thing Tom had shot was already lost. The sky was beginning to lighten, the mist thinning into the soft gold of morning. The forest stretched out beyond the clearing, still and watchful. Somewhere out there, Blackwood swallowed its dead. A chopper's blades began to spin up again behind him, slow at first, then building into the familiar, rhythmic thrum. The sound vibrated through his bones. He stood, boots squelching in the wet grass, and walked toward the loading zone. Flight Lieutenant Sarah Kemp stood by the open bay, helmet under her arm, jacket half-zipped. Her posture was stiff with fatigue, but her eyes were sharp. "Ride's ready," she said. Tom climbed in without a word. The interior smelled of antiseptic and diesel, the benches slick with condensation. The stretcher brackets were empty now. Only a few sealed packs remained, lashed down with a webbing. Kemp followed him in, nodding to the crew chief to seal the doors. The rotor wash drowned the rest of the world. As the helicopter rose, the clearing fell away beneath them. White tents, glinting torches, the scorched patch where the watchtower had stood. Beyond that, the forest. Vast, broken in places, quiet now. Tom sat with the boots in his lap, watching the trees recede. Kemp sat across from him, arms crossed over her vest. "I read your file," she said after a long pause. "The rescue near Windermere. 2 years back." He didn't look at her. "You stayed behind to get a second party out. Made the call to delay extraction. Lost 3 people, but saved 5. Still, he said nothing. "You made the right call," she said, "even if it didn't feel like it." Tom looked down at the boots, pale blue and frayed, a matched pair now. "She named him Max," he said. "I know." The chopper banked slightly, the sun catching on the edge of the cockpit window. Light spilled into the cabin, soft and golden. It touched the side of Kemp's face, outlined the dried blood on her collar, the crease at the corner of her mouth. "You did right by them," she said. Tom didn't answer. Not with words. He just nodded once, slowly, the way people did when they couldn't quite say thank you or "I'm sorry" or "I forgive you," but meant all 3. Minutes passed. The landscape rolled beneath them, rivers swollen from the night's rain, roads blocked by fallen trees, rooftops half submerged. Villages that had once lit up the map now lay dark, scattered with the remnants of flight. A clothesline still flapped on one roof, a stubborn patch of color against the ruin. Tom turned the boots in his hands. The yarn had come loose on one. The other was perfect, made with care, with hope, maybe before everything unraveled. He tucked them into his jacket near his heart. The radio crackled in the cockpit. A voice female, clipped, came through. "LZ secure. Medical receiving ready. Be advised, perimeter sweep in progress. No active threats on approach vector." Kemp stood and tapped the crew chief. 2 minutes, she said over the engine noise. The final descent came smoother than the last. The chopper settled on a makeshift helipad, a stretch of tarmac marked with flares and painted lines half washed away by rain. Medics waited, stretchers prepped, bandoliers of supplies slung over their shoulders like soldiers of an unfamiliar war. Tom stepped down onto solid ground. The air smelled cleaner here, less of blood, more of earth and ash and something faintly green. Life, maybe, trying to come back. He followed Kemp toward the hangar-turned triage. Inside, the hum of machines and soft beeps of monitors replaced the forest silence. A nurse passed with a clipboard. Someone coughed. Somewhere, a baby cried. Tom stopped at the doorway. Anna sat on a cot near the back wall, a blanket around her shoulders. The baby was in her arms, swaddled in a woolen wrap that looked too big for him. His head was nestled against her collarbone, one tiny hand curled like a shell. She looked up and saw him. For a long moment, neither moved. Then she shifted just slightly, making space beside her. He approached slowly, boots heavy on the concrete. Sat down, careful not to jostle the cot. The baby stirred, yawned, and settled again. "I wasn't sure I'd see you," Anna said quietly. "Me neither," Tom replied. She smiled, tired and thin, but real. "He's strong. Took to feeding straight away. The midwife said that's a good sign." He nodded, eyes on the child. "He looks like Max," she said. "Around the eyes." Tom reached into his jacket and pulled out the boots, held them out. "I kept these," he said. "Seemed wrong to leave them behind." She took them gently, pressed them to her lips, then tucked them into the wrap beside the baby. "Thank you," she said. They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of the ward around them like a distant sea. The baby shifted again, his hand brushing Anna's chest. Tom spoke without looking up. "I couldn't save him. Not really. I know. I waited too long." "No," she said firmly. "You waited as long as you could. And then you did what no one else could have." He looked at her then, and something in her face, exhausted, fierce, forgiving, made it possible to breathe again. Outside, the dawn broke fully. The sky turned pale gold, the clouds lifting just enough to show the first stretch of blue. Somewhere in the hills beyond, Blackwood waited. Quiet now. The horde scattered, the storm passed. But it would not forget. Nor would he. Tom stood after a while, gave her a small nod. She returned it. As he turned to go, the baby let out a soft, hiccuping sound. Tom paused, glanced back. Anna smiled faintly. "He's got your stubbornness." He raised an eyebrow. "You stayed," she said, "when most would have run." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded again and stepped outside. The sunlight hit his face like a benediction. It wasn't warm, not yet, but it was real. The world hadn't healed. Not even close. But somewhere behind him, a child was breathing. A name had been given. A promise made. That would have to be enough. For now,